Thanks for watching MLK FBI. Now it's time for a conversation between myself and the director of Judas and the Black Messiah, Shaka King.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Shaka, I'm going to start off, man.
Okay.
I watched the film, and then I had to go back and watch the Eyes on the Prize segment about the Panthers and O'Neal. Then I went back and watched the full interview of O'Neal, and I thought, man, oh man, this guy's all over the place, man. He's so complicated, man. And I think you did a wonderful job, man, with Lakeith playing him, man. I mean, the complexities, the levels of feelings that he has about the Panthers and about Fred and about this guy Mitchell. It's like, woo. I mean, it must have taken you some time to really get there with that. Tell me about that, man.
It was. Thank you. First of all, it was challenging because you go into it. It's hard not to judge him when you start out.
Right.
And that's a terrible place to be when you're crafting a character. And so it took a lot of drafts for us to stop, myself and my co-writer, Will Burson, for us to stop labeling him a sociopath. I'd say about 6 drafts before we said, this is preventing us from really gaining an understanding of this character, the kind of understanding you need to really make him the protagonist of your film. And
right.
So then we just started to sort of contextualize things and really pour over that interview, kind of like detectives, to get a sense of, where this guy's head was at, but right before he took his life, essentially, before he took his life.
Right.
And then it just was fascinating to just like discover things like, the fact that he used the term "we" and "us" to refer to both the Panthers and the FBI interchangeably. The fact that he contradicted himself all the time. So it's very hard to get a sense of what's real and what's not. Because he says he grew up wanting to be a cop, and he says he grew up not wanting to be a cop, and but then thinking about the fact that he'd used this badge, like the way he'd weaponized this badge, kind of gave me some insight into the kind of cop he'd want to be, but also to the fact that he took pleasure in manipulating, that it was kind of a game and a sport to him in some ways, and then that kind of gives you a lens into his immaturity. And so, you start to get a more well-rounded idea of what this guy was like. And you realize that ultimately he's someone who spent a lifetime attempting to convince himself of a lie, right. And ultimately wasn't able to do so.
That's right.
Like I remember getting to the end of the interview, the portion that we end the film with, and when he said what he said there, I was like, oh wow, like it was almost like when you're a kid and you have that like friend or that person who tries to instigate fights because they can't fight. It's like he says like the most exaggerated. He makes the most exaggerated claim as to having not been an armchair revolutionary, to have dedicated himself to the cause after he's, for the last 2 hours or hour and change, just told a completely different story.
I know, man. That was amazing about it.
Just like, yeah. And so it was just like, I was like, this is an interesting guy. This is a really interesting person.
It was also interesting too, when I was watching the film and listening to Hoover talk about, the fear he had of Fred Hampton, and then thinking of him as a Black Messiah. And then in my film, in MLK FBI, saying after the March on Washington, the most dangerous Negro in America. I mean, Hoover's obsession with Black men and his fear of Black men sexually, just really so rampant. When he's talking to Mitchell in that scene about your daughter, would you want your daughter to bring a Negro home? I said, this guy is completely fucked up, man.
When I watched your documentary, that was one of the things that jumped out to me, just in terms of the insane overlap that we have in looking at these two individuals, and Martin Luther King and Fred Hampton, and how the fact that you all tapped into Hoover's fear, being so motivated by his fear of Black male sexuality, some might argue even more than he feared communism. You know what I mean?
I think so. I think it's true. I think you can make a good case for that, because he's so obsessive, man. He's so obsessive, and you can see with COINTELPRO, you know, infiltrating both, you know, SCLC, the Nation of Islam, the Black Panther Party. You know, this guy was obsessed. You know, and it's, again, I was saying to some people when I was talking about my film, I was saying his whole fear was the fact that us, these Black leaders, were going to undermine this notion of American democracy, which was whiteness, you know, which comes through, you know, in both films, really comes through.
Absolutely,
man.
absolutely.
But if I had a creative question, though, man, the one question that when O'Neill goes to the roof, and then he gets out of the building, no one ever challenged him, man.
Yeah. You know what? The funny thing is, we had a scene where when he comes to the burnt out building, you don't see this, we cut this shot, but in that, you know, wide shot reveal the burnt out headquarters, he comes inside and then was like, where the hell have you been? You know, and as and this is actually like, quite frankly, it was a terribly written scene and a terribly directed scene, that portion of it. Right. So that's one of the reasons why we cut it out, because it was just awful. But we had O'Neill, you know, come in and everyone asked like where he's been. And before he gives an excuse, and as he's giving an excuse, Bobby Rush is like, you know, the hell with all that, like, you know, how are we going to get this place rebuilt? And it just read fake, you know what I mean?
So
but you got rid of it, and it was like, I just hope people don't ask the question, why did nobody question? You're the first to point that out. But I was
watching, I said, what happened? But, you know, but the scene that really stood out for me, there's two scenes that really stand out for me that really work so well. Yeah. When he's at the meeting and the brother sees him and says, you the guy who came to that restaurant. And then when she's in the car, pulls a gun, and he really works himself, man. Yeah. What do you think? You know, I hotwired the car. You know how to hotwire? Show me how to hotwire.
That, you know, it's funny because that was a scene that, you know, I remember in the development process. I think it might have been when we were already at Warner Brothers. Just there was a desire for us to just add more genre elements to the movie, and I think Will came up with the idea for the hot wiring, and he wrote that scene. And I remember reading it and being like, oh yeah, this could be kind of cool. And then, you know, you get the actors in place, and Lakeith just, you know, both. It's a tough line to walk, because you're watching an actor play a person who's acting,
right?
You know, who's not a good actor, but is a good liar. So it's it's such a tricky performance for him to pull off, and the fact that he was able to hit those notes, make it feel somewhat believable, but also make it seem like O'Neill's kind of good at this. Yeah. You know, hats off to him.
So what do you think these two films are saying about where America's at today? The fact that they're both getting such exposure, man.
You know, I think it's interesting coming at a time when the FBI has been talked about so positively in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And you know, I think I'm thankful that it's a wave of movies just being like, do not fall for that, you know, and do not believe the hype, because in screening this film for organizers that are on the ground today, they talk about how they're still under constant surveillance. You know, you look at documentaries like Terror, which was a major inspiration for our film by Lyric Cabral and David Sutcliffe. And, you know, just COINTELPRO is still in existence, still alive and well. So it's nice that we have, you know, just some films and pop culture coming out, getting people interested in this history. And I think they themselves are connecting it to the present in a lot of ways.
Yeah, my feeling is that I hope both these films and the United States versus Billie Holiday challenges people to go read this history, man, really dig into the history and the development of this mythology of the FBI, which has been so untrue for so many years, you know, and really showing the light of day. Because you're right, people might forget because these last 4 years with Trump, you know, Trump's so bad, you start thinking the FBI is not so bad, but they are. You know, they got such deep secrets that they still probably got done some really dastardly things, man. dastardly things.
Yeah.
When, you know, it's just amazing about the FBI, man. You know, it's scary. Is this guy Mitchell still alive? The guy who?
No, he passed. He passed many years ago. Yeah.
The other thing that was interesting to me was when I was watching the Eyes on the Prize segment, and Fred's wife Diane Johnson, she's so different today, you know. So when we shot it, I said that's his, you know, because I talked to Fred Hampton Jr. and Diane. What's her name now?
Deborah. Her name was Deborah. Now it's Akuna Najiri.
Akuna Najiri. I talked to them a few weeks ago about another project, and they're pretty intense, man.
Yeah, they are. They're very much, you know, it's you're talking about revolutionaries. So they're very sharp. And you're also talking about folks who were betrayed. And so they, you know, they really are very attentive to what you're saying, how you're saying it, who you are. You know, they're very thorough in terms of who they even, I think, interact with, you know, initially. So yeah, no, it took a year and a half for us to get them to sign on board. Yeah, it took a year and a half.
Because Chairman Fred Jr. sounds just like his dad.
Exactly,
you know,
like his dad.
He just sounds like his dad, man.
Yeah.
And Daniel, man, I'm listening to him talking about doing that speech at the church, and then I'm watching the archival footage, and I'm saying, man, he got it down.
He really did.
He really had it down, man. Because I saw him at the Golden Globes the other night talking when he won the award. And I'm saying, well, that's how because I never really hear him speaking with his English accent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What he and Audrey Lacron, you know, our dialect coach did, it's such a tricky thing to nail. I mean, you know, Daniel and I, we sat down for about a year prior to shooting for about 4 days. And we played with some weird dialects. You know what I mean? We brought out some like Bernie Mac footage. We brought out some like Eddie Murphy footage. We brought out Robin Harris footage. We brought out obviously Fred Hampton audio and Fred Hampton Jr. audio, just because he sounds so much like his dad. And we just kind of played with different dialects because there's a lot of things going on with Fred's dialect, in that, you know, he's got the Chicago Midwest thing, this kind of like many regions of dialect combined, and then you know, his family was from Louisiana, you know, and so he had that kind of Southern inflection, and then there was just a sort of tonality, like kind of a O kind of tonality that was present in his tone, that was really the hardest thing, I think, for Dale and nail, so that he could sound like him, but also it be clear enough, because Fred spoke so quickly, and you know, I mean, if he tried to sort of imitate the dialect exactly, we would probably have to subtitle a significant portion. So he had to slow things down. He had to do a lot of real crazy alchemy to come up with that, and then modulate between, you know, his speech voice and then his intimate conversation voice and his teaching voice. You know, it was remarkable what he did.
He did a great job, man. But it's also amazing too, when I'm watching this footage of both him and King, I forget, man, that they were such young men. I mean, he's only 21 years old and King was like 38 years old. These are young men, man, who are basically front and center, fighting the revolution, man. You know, it's amazing. That period in American history, man, is like, you forget how impactful it was, you know.
It's incredibly rich for, you know, it's just so rich for stories. It's like, you know, you have just so much drama and so much untold, you know, hidden history, just like ripe for retelling.
Right.
And reframing, you know, really reframing, because there's so much mistruth has been put forth.
I know. I heard you. I watched an interview with you the other day where you were talking about how a lot of people don't even realize the only thing they know about Fred is that he was killed. You know, they don't know more of his backstory. You know, and then you know, you just realize this young man was phenomenal. You know, phenomenal in his politics, man, and his actions, just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I saw you had Craig Harris as one of the composers on there, man.
Yeah. You know, that's my uncle, right?
I didn't know that.
That's my uncle.
Craig
Yeah.
Harris,
How do you know
uncle, huh?
Craig? How do you know
Oh
Craig?
man, I'm a jazz
Okay.
aficionado, man. I love all jazz musicians, man. And I seen Craig Harris perform, man, with David Murray and other people.
Yeah, yeah, yep,
I
yep,
didn't know he
yep.
was your uncle because the
That's my
first piece of
uncle,
music
man.
you guys do is a Roland Kirk piece of music, And
Yep.
I said, "Where's Rassan's name?"
Oh, Rasan. Here's the thing that's funny. That's Rasan. That's like not even,
That is
we didn't.
Rassan,
That's
yeah.
straight Rasan. Like there's a contrabass clarinet underneath it, but it's just playing alongside Rasan. And then we actually, if you listen to the strings in the movie, they're all interpolations of the inflated tear.
It's Pierre, yeah.
They all of it. So it's kind of peppered throughout the film. That's why they're not eligible for an
Ah,
Oscar because there's so
ah.
many interpolations of the inflated tear.
And because as soon as I heard, I said, "That's inflated tear." I know this too.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted that in there from the time we pitched the movie
Yeah,
to the studios. Like, it's just it's one of the most amazing songs I've heard in my
yeah,
life.
it's fantastic, and it worked too. With him walking
Yeah,
down the
yeah,
street, looking at the
yeah,
car, going to the bar, it really
yeah,
worked.
yeah,
It really
yeah.
was effective. So here's another scene that I found really interesting, man. After Mitchell says to O'Neill he wants him to do the diagram, the layout, and he's in that bar, and the other
Hmm.
brother's trying to hit on that woman, and she comes over
Hmm.
to O'Neill, and
Hmm.
then the other brother walks over and says, he tells him he's also, undercover. You
Hmm.
you guys are the good. I know that scene's not is a made up scene, but it worked really well, man. Is
Thank
that
you,
true?
thank you, thank you. Well, we do know that he drugged him, right?
That
And
I believe.
so we know that O'Neill drugged him, and I think it came down to, look, either he was given the drugs directly by Mitchell, and he went ahead and did it willfully, or there was a bit of subterfuge at play, and ultimately he went along willfully regardless. But I thought it was just interesting if he would, because we set up that Mitchell kind of has him between a rock and a hard place to some
Yeah,
degree in that
yeah.
restaurant scene. But the final twist is, Mitchell's lied to him and said, nobody knows your identity except me. He's
That's
told him
right.
that throughout time and time and time again. So to me, the ultimate way that he get O'Neill on the hook and really, kind of twist the knife is if he reveals, no, there's somebody else who knows your identity. And you'll never, no matter where if you don't do this, no matter where you go, I'll find you. And it could be a stranger who walks up to you,
Right.
you know. Um, and so just to elevate that sense of paranoia, it was like, let's have it be another individual. And then when the idea came for him to give him his badge, it was like, oh,
Ah,
like
that
this is,
was that was a great
yeah,
coup de grace,
yeah,
man. That was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
uh-oh.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it worked, man. It really worked. Very effective filmmaking, man.
Thank you, thank you, thank
Very effective. So you must have a bunch of scripts knocking coming to your door now, man.
you. I mean, yeah, I'm getting, but you know how it is, like they see you do something like this and they think, what do we have that they think is similar to this that I'd want
Right.
to make? And that's the last thing I'd ever want
You want to do
to
something different.
make.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Something different, yeah,
I
yeah,
know the feeling, man. I know the
yeah,
feeling. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, this is cool, man. I'm glad they're doing a double bill on Saturday. People can see
I
both
am
of these
too.
films.
I am too. Like it's just, I mean, like I said, the overlap in our films is astonishing, man. When I heard that quote from Martin Luther King about, Appalachians, literally Appalachians, Mexicans, and Puerto Ricans, like, oh
Right.
my God, like I cannot believe that, you know,
That's right.
he's not, I mean, I'm like, is he talking about Chicago? He probably not. It's just astonishing.
So I'm gonna throw over to your film. So now,
Okay. Okay.
so
Okay.
it's been really good talking to you, Shaka, about both MLK and Judas and the Black Messiah. And so, folks, I'm going to introduce you to Shaka King, who's going to introduce his film.
Hello, Rooftop Films. Thank you for screening Judas and the Black Messiah. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Take care.